Alright guys, I think I'm back. So, yeah, looks good. Looks good. Alright guys, I'm back. So it's time for our study group time. So we are going over A New Earth with Eckhart Tolle. So that's what we're doing. So for those of you who have never been to the study group, basically we read the book and I stop, I give commentary, and then I respond to questions as well. So if you want to ask a question that pertains to the material we're going to be reading, or if you want to ask a question that's a spiritual based question or topical question, no personal readings, no personal questions, then go ahead and feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the comment section below. Yeah, so just FYI with that. If you're on Facebook and on YouTube and then you see people popping in there who are just being rude or whatever, just ignore them, just because they're, for some reason, it tends to show up on there. It's either on YouTube or on Facebook. So people pop in and they start being rude or whatever, or they're just being spammers and they're trying to like get y'all to like buy services. So just be aware of that. But we're gonna discuss the material. I'm gonna stop. We'll talk about it. Give me your questions about that, and then we'll get into it. Okay. All right. So let's get started here. I want to make sure that y'all didn't ask anything before I get started. Perfect. Cool. All right, cool. So the last page we left off of, we were on page 64 of the book. Again, A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle, New Birth. And we are on reactivity and grievances. Whereas resentment is often the emotion that goes with complaining, it may also be accompanied by a stronger emotion such as anger or some other form of upset. In this way, it becomes more highly charged energetically. Complaining then turns into reactivity, another of the ego's ways of strengthening self. There are many people who are always waiting for the next thing to react against, to feel annoyed or disturbed about, and it never takes long before they find it. This is an outrage, they say. How dare you? I resent this. They are addicted to upset and anger as others are to a drug. Through reacting against this or that, they assert and strengthen their feeling of self. And I'll stop there because I want to make mention of that. And I've definitely experienced this myself because in two instances. One, first of all, whenever we greet people or say, hey, how are you doing? Or hey, what's going on? Or hey, whatever. Everybody, I've noticed that most people have a tendency of starting to complain about something that's wrong. So whenever you ask people, how are you doing today? And everything like that, immediately, and I think this is not just like a personality thing, I think this is a cultural thing, where from the cultural perspective, whenever we are connecting with people and asking them how they are, etc., we share suffering. We all share this, and this is something that we all go through. Most people are not in this euphoric, happy state. So most people don't immediately begin to discuss or converse regarding the happy or the good things in their life. Not only that, but a lot of people have been conditioned and taught that talking about what's great in your life or how good things are is almost like bragging. And so it can come across like bragging. So most of us, by default, just based on conditioning, we're used to, when we're asked, how are you doing? Or hey, what's new with you? We automatically tend to complain or go into what's wrong, or this is my story, or this is what that happened. And so we'll find something to complain about. And you have to learn to catch yourself, because it took me a long time to get over that. To this very day, whenever I say, hey, how are you doing today? Most people immediately want to start to go into a complaining mode, and then I try to pull back the conversation and focus it on something else altogether, just because I don't want it to become a venting session. That's not what I'm usually there for in instances. I'm not talking about like clients at appointments. People who are clients, they can, that's when they have that time with me, they can go off on whatever they want to go off about. But I'm talking about like just people in general, like family members, friends, etc. So you have to pull that conversation back and bring it to something that you would rather talk about or discuss. Now, sometimes we as humans, we do need to vent or express ourselves, but it shouldn't be every conversation. It shouldn't be every single time we connect and start just sharing in our experience or just sharing energy and exchanging. So you have to learn to catch yourself, because we may be the first to do that. And then we have to learn to like just kind of take a person's conversation and draw it into some other topic or some other area altogether. And I've had to learn to do this with my sister as well, because my middle sister, Rini, by default, whenever she gets overwhelmed or something happens, she gets really upset or she gets really fixated on that. And years ago, I taught her how to pivot her mindset. So whenever she is going through something that is really tough, or she's just caught up in something, I taught her how to pivot. And the way that I taught her how to pivot was just simply, she'd call me up, she'd start going, discussing and venting, and I'd give her a moment to just express what's going on and just to feel what she's feeling. And then I would say, oh my God, did you hear about, not to change the topic, but did you hear about, mom's, but did you hear about Pepe or mom's boyfriend? Did you hear about Karina? Or did you hear about, and I just bring up a different conversation. And immediately it sounds like gossip, and people, when they love complaining. And so they would rather get caught up in gossiping than they would to just go through a complaining, venting period. So when you create the dynamic where it was something juicy or something entertaining, immediately it draws the attention away. And that was a trick that I taught her. I would just create some, it almost felt like I was reaching for gossip, even though there really wasn't gossip, but I would bring it up. And then I would just start talking about something and just going into depth about it. And then I would ask her opinion, and I would engage her in the conversation. And so within 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, she was no longer upset. She was focusing on a topic or a subject matter that had nothing to do with her condition or what she was just experiencing. And so then I would ask her, how do you feel right now? She's like, I feel fine. And I was like, okay. I was like, you saw what you just did. You just pivoted. I was like, I know that you were really upset about that. I know that you were struggling with that. But at the same time, it's going to be fine. You're going to get through this, because you always do. You're a badass and you know how to overcome shit. So you're going to get through this. So don't worry so much about this. But look what you did. You just pivoted. You just took your attention and you focused on something else, and immediately got drawn into that new narrative, that new story. Even though it's a trick that I used, it worked, and it helped her to kind of get out of that state. And so with yourself, you have to pivot that energy and that mindset away from what's bothering you, and then focus on something that you can just use as a it's almost like taking one drug and replacing it with another one that isn't so bad, or that isn't so, so sometimes if you're an alcoholic and you have issues with substance abuse or coping, and it's hard for you and you've tried to not be an alcoholic or do the program, or try to overcome that, and it's just not working for you, some people will actually replace drinking or alcohol with cannabis or something else. But it's almost like a substitute for the hardcore one that was really affecting them, and then they can wean themselves off or kind of trigger a shift in their trajectory of how they're handling with that. So that's just a couple of tricks that have worked in that way. There's another thing that I wanted to bring up is, I remember watching this episode of Star Trek, and in this one episode there was a character, her name is Seven, or Seven of Nine is a full name, but her name is Seven, and her character in the show, she as a child, she was taken from her family, and then she was mechanically altered so that she was part machine and part human, and she was turned into this machine zombie that had to do a bunch of things automatically without having any control or say in the matter. And she spent 15, 20 years being that way. And so when she was taken away, when she was rescued and was returned to more of a human appearance and look more human than a machine, she was having to relearn how to be human, and she was having to relearn about things. But things for an average person that would bother them wouldn't bother her, because she didn't think it was relevant. That's not relevant, or what's significant, that's not significant. And in one episode, they believed that she was attacked by another guy. They were visiting, trying to get some trade. They were doing trade with another people. They were doing trade with another world or planet, and this guy, they believed that this guy had attacked her and violated her, and she had no real memory of it. She had some sense of something happened, but she didn't remember all the details. So when she was put into a cognitive, a change in her perspective, or put it through a hypnotic regression, she remembered the details of what happened, and in her memory she was attacked and she was violated. Going back here, I don't know why it's doing that. Sometimes when the internet's not playing nice, it drops it, and I don't know why it does that. So I had to just switch over to a different, see if it holds. So hey guys, sorry on Facebook and YouTube if you got dropped. For some reason the internet disconnected, but I'm back here. So anyways, so she was affected. She wasn't really, she didn't feel affected. She wasn't damaged. She wasn't hurt. but just the memory and that experience. And it wasn't even traumatizing. She didn't experience a trauma from it because she didn't feel a connection or an attachment to that experience. It was just a memory that was causing her to react or to respond in certain instances. So when the doctor came along and was like, don't you feel violated? Now that you're human, people think that you're vulnerable or you're weak. And, as a machine, as a Borg, you could, wipe somebody out really easily. And so this person took advantage of you in your weakened state. So he put into her mind and put into her psyche the idea that she's vulnerable and that she's not strong and that she's not empowered and that she's easily manipulated or affected, and that's what affected her. And so she became attached to a sense of trauma because of what he was trying to get her to understand. And so sometimes in the real world, in our life, we may go through things, and some of us are tougher than we look, and we can get through stuff even if there's a trauma, even if there's something that we're still being affected by or plagued by, but we can get through it. And we don't have to sit and harp on it. We don't have to sit and just consistently talk about it, consistently go over it over and over and over again. And some people do. Some people, they don't know what else to do, and they want their pain acknowledged. They want to feel like someone knows what they've gone through. But when you get to a place where you start repeating and it becomes your lifestyle, your habit, your way of operating, it can create a lot of issues for you individually, because you're perpetuating and you're bringing up all of that trauma and pain regularly, consistently. And so you're going to become even more attached to that trauma. You're going to become even more affected with that trauma, by that trauma. So you're going to become more attached to it, and it's going to be harder to release it. It's one thing to acknowledge what has happened and what you've gone through. It's another thing when you want to repeatedly speak on it, discuss it, talk about it, and spin it in different ways so that it stays alive. That doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you, and if anything, it's only going to keep you from healing, keep you from recovering, keep you from moving forward and away from that energy and away from what that brought up. And so that's something to be aware of and to remember. So when you're asking somebody, hey, how are you doing? And they go into their whole normal, they're just complaining about this, complaining about that, and it's what they've always done. Then when people ask, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep repeating these experiences? Why do these things keep showing up in my life? Well, how much are you throwing into that? How much energy have you invested in supporting and sustaining that as if it lives right now in this moment, when it passed or it happened 20 years ago? So sometimes we have to be careful with what we speak on or what we complain about, because we could actually be reactivating old energy and old trauma that we've already moved past and we've already moved beyond. A long-standing resentment is called a grievance. To carry a grievance is to be in a permanent state of against. And that is why grievances constitute a significant part of collective grievances can survive for centuries in the psyche of a nation or tribe and fuel a never-ending cycle of violence, which we already are seeing that play out in so many different scenarios and instances. We are seeing that all play out. I mean, we saw that come up with the protests last year. We've seen that come up with different types of movements. Right now, with everything that happened recently in Afghanistan, we have people who have a collective suffering, and they are traumatized by a regime that was there before, but they are also traumatized by people coming in and taking over and then changing their own image and then not staying around to follow through with everything, or not sticking around, which is understandable, but still, it's not the best way to approach situations. And so you've got collective trauma. And so these who are going through this right now, the trauma they have right now, they're experiencing, is going to perpetuate. It's going to carry on to their children and so forth. I have clients who are Iranian, and they left, or their families escaped during the revolution. When back in the day, if you look at old pictures of Afghanistan, when you have pictures of women and they've got their American attire and they've got all the it's the same thing in Iran before you had the political powers that are in power now, or the religious powers. They were very Americanized in their way of how things were. And so once you had these very religious ideologies take over and take on during the revolution, a lot of people left and escaped because they didn't want to have to go through all of that. They didn't want to have to they felt like they were going to be moving backwards, and so they left. And so we ended up with a lot of citizens here, Iranian, who still are Iranian, but they left because of the persecution and out of the fear of death. Same thing with Cubans. Cubans left Cuba during all of that because of what was going on there. So you have all of these collective groups of people and tribes and who have suffered, who have endured, who have gone. And no one can dismiss that collective suffering. No one can say, hey, what you or your people went through, same thing with Jewish peoples, what your people went through, you know, you're not allowed to feel that way because that happened generations before you, or that happened 200 years ago, or that didn't directly happen to you. I have friends who are Jewish who, you know, they donate money to, you know, Jewish causes or to movements or to organizations to maintain their safety, because there's a collective fear that if we don't donate money to our organizations that are designed to protect us from this ever happening again, like what happened in World War II and the Nazis, then this will happen to us again. And so this is why when you see what was happening a few months ago with Israel and the Gaza Strip, when they were firing rockets back at each other and so forth, you know, the Israelis were not going to put up with anything. So they were like, oh, overkill, like you know, you throw something at us, we're going to bust your ass. And so they were not going to put up with it, and they were being very aggressive in their response. And that's because of the collective suffering, the collective trauma of the people and what they suffered during World War II. What happened when they didn't have systems and organizations and governments in place that would ensure their protections. And so it's important that people understand that, you know, collective groups of people do go through collective suffering, and we can't even get close to understanding what that was like, because if we didn't go through it, if we didn't experience it, we don't have the right to rob a people or a group of their experience. We don't have the right to say, well, you don't have the right to feel that way because that wasn't you, or you didn't go through that directly, or, you know, you're generations removed from that experience. So it can get a little tricky. But having a trauma and using that trauma to cause change, to bring about or to facilitate change or progress is one thing. Using that trauma as an excuse, whether it be collective trauma as a people or whether it be as an individual, using your personal trauma, your personal pains and sufferings, using that as an excuse or as a reason to operate the same way, but also simultaneously complain that nothing is improving or nothing is getting better in your life, where you keep repeating the same patterns and the same challenges and suffering, that's a different story. And that in itself is something where at some point you have to own that experience, you have to own that situation, you have to own that and not let it stand in your way. You know, when I was building myself up, I started to connect with people who had money. I started connecting with people who were millionaires, or definitely in a different strata than what I grew up in. I grew up from the hood, on food stamps, you know, still to this day, don't speak perfect English, don't write perfectly. There's a lot of things that I don't do well or perfectly because it's not something that was a priority growing up. You know, my priority was, you know, surviving, paying my bills, feeding myself, taking care of my mother who was mentally ill, and just trying to get a good job that was going to pay me well enough to do that. That was a priority for me. So for me, the idea of like thinking about, you know, these going to college and getting a full like education with credentials and degrees, etc., that wasn't a priority for me. I wanted that, but it wasn't. Why is this turning off? I can use that as an excuse to let's go back here. Okay, I can use this as an excuse to not better myself, or to not push myself, or to not evolve, to not develop, to not grow. I can use that as an excuse and let the anxiety and the fear of being inadequate, I can let that get in my way, but I don't, because what's the point? Like, no, I don't think so. I remember, here's an example of this. When I was making some changes with my business and I moved here to New Mexico, I had to redo my whole LLC. And the idea of having to do all that paperwork and do all of that filing and documentation seems so daunting and overwhelming for me. And I had already had someone who was certified, who was a tax architect, who went to school. This was their area of specialty. I already had someone who did all that for me in Texas. So when I moved here, it had to be redone because it didn't carry over to New Mexico, and so basically it was just a hot mess. And in order for me to pay New Mexico taxes, I had to have an LLC in New Mexico. So I was like, oh my God. So we had to go through this whole song and dance. But nonetheless, in order for me to get an LLC set up here properly so that I didn't make mistakes that I was going to have to pay later on for, because it was very complicated, I needed to go to an attorney. And so I had to go to a law firm that was, their specialty is litigation and business law and so forth. So I made the appointment. I went, automatically going into a professional environment with attorneys who went to college and got all these, got their degrees. It is very intimidating and very much can put you off. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I grew up, again, I'm whole school Hispanic. Hispanics are real good at not going to the hospital because they're afraid of going to professional environments, dealing with professionals. Like, there's this mindset. There's a mentality there that carries over with Hispanics in the hood. Like, it's very intimidating. So because they're intimidated, sometimes they don't do things. So like my mom wouldn't call, like once I had accidentally ingested like this chemical, and I was like, Mom, call poison control, I'm gonna die. And this was when I was a kid, and she didn't want to because she was intimidated by calling poison control. So I was like, so I had to do it myself. So when I went to the but I have to list, you know what, I'm Ferny and I need to do this. This is a necessity for me, and it doesn't matter what my background is, because at the end of the day, they have the ability to do what I need them to do, and I have the money to pay them to do it for me, and that's all that matters. And so this is what I need done. It doesn't matter what my background is, what I do, it doesn't matter. This is what I need. And so I forced myself into that situation that was very intimidating, and even talking to the main main attorney, the owner of the practice, I had to sit down with him, and I was discussing some of the complications and some of the issues with the LLC carrying over, and et cetera. And so with everything that I said and everything that I mentioned to him, he just had this look. He just looked at me in just in an interesting way. And when we were done, and I was saying, thank you so much, I really appreciate that, he was surprised at what I was doing at my age. And then he was also like, what school did you go to? And I knew he meant college, because that's a thing. Like, what university did you study at, or what school, and so I said, oh, I went to Stephen F. Austin, and so he thought I was talking about university, and I said, no, I never got a college education. I said I went for a couple of semesters, but I had to drop out because of some personal reasons. So didn't get a college education. I just went to high school. That was it. And the look on his face was just, he wasn't prepared for that answer. He actually thought I went to college, even though I did not get a degree and I didn't go to college. I'm like, nope, didn't do that. So I don't think he didn't know how to deal with. I don't think he knew how to respond to that, because again, it's a thing where it's like, you should be proud of the college you went to. This I went to Texas State University, or I went to U of H or whatever like that. And I'm just like, I don't have a university to use as a badge of accomplishment. I just have life skills, and I built a business from the ground up. I ran a business at Starbucks for many years. I got a lot of experience. So everything that I've been able to do and I've done has either been because I experienced some things, or I just forced myself to do it even when I was afraid and didn't want to do it. So that's, I don't know why I went into that topic, but that's just an idea for like not letting your story, that's what I was trying to get to. Not letting your story, not letting your background, not letting where you came from or what you came from to dictate the value and the worth that you have to bring into this world, because you can bring so much value, so much worth. You don't need a college degree to do so. You don't need someone telling you you're worth something. You don't need someone affirming or validating your pictures on social media and telling you how incredible you are. You don't need that. You can get that for fun. I mean, it's nice fun. I love flirting, cute guys. I love flirting. It's nice getting the attention. I love people giving me feedback. It's great. Ego trip, but it's not necessary, and you can be of value and worth in this world without having any of those things. So agree. And actually, that kind of points me to also, whenever I am scrolling through like social media, whenever I'm seeing profiles and etc., whenever I see profiles or their feed, and every single picture is meticulously done to where it makes this person's life seem completely amazing, and there's nothing wrong, I'm immediately put off by that, because right away I'm like, you're trying to represent yourself in the world in a way where you can be accepted, or where people can, and get it. I get it. In some instances where it's a professional page, or so, yeah, I get it. But there are plenty of people who are professionals who, not every single thing that's on there is going to look like perfect, and so it's okay to be human. So I'm always put off by people's profiles that it's like meticulously perfect. I'm like, can I get the real person, please? Can I know who you actually are? Just because that's way too constructed. That is way too articulated and too contrived to be accurate. And it is not, it almost feels like a disservice to humanity, because it's basically saying, in order for you to do good things or to be successful, your life has to look like mine. And it's not true. It's not true. You can be human and have plenty of stuff to deal with and still be successful. So I don't really care for like the perfect like feeds and stuff like that. I'm like, no, show me a freaking like, show me a pimple, shoes. I don't care. Like, as long as you're a human being and you're real, and I know that I'm going to speak to a real person, I'm down with that. Which is why I try not to overly structure my page or structure my profile or my pictures. I mean, I'll have some pictures that are filtered, obviously, but there are some pictures that are not filtered. Right now, I'm not filtered right now. You can see, the way the camera is showing my skin makes it look like I've got all these issues and stuff. But that's the way that's going to look on camera if the camera's set up a certain way. So it doesn't matter, because you can bring value and worth to the world without having to be perfect or to look perfect. A grievance is a strong negative emotion connected to an event in the sometimes distant past that is being kept alive by compulsive thinking, by retelling the story in the head or out loud, or what someone did to me, or what someone did to us. A grievance will also contaminate other areas of your life. For example, while you think about and feel your grievance, its negative emotional energy can distort your perception of an event that is happening in the present, or influence the way in which you speak or behave towards someone in the present. One strong grievance is enough to contaminate large areas of your life and keep you in the grip of the ego. It requires honesty to see whether you still harbor grievances, whether there is someone in your life you have not completely forgiven, an enemy. If you do, become aware of the grievance both on the level of thought as well as emotion. That is to say, be aware of the thoughts that keep it alive, and feel the emotion that is the body's response to those thoughts. Don't try to let go of the grievance. Trying to let go, to forgive, does not work. Forgiveness happens naturally when you see that it has no purpose other than to strengthen a false sense of self, to keep the ego in place. The sensing is freeing. Jesus' teaching to forgive your enemies is essentially about the undoing of one of the main egoic structures in the human mind. The past has no power to stop you from being present now. Only your grievance about the past can do that. And what is grievance? The baggage of old thought and emotion. Here's an example of this, and I'll stop there because that's a good stopping point. Here's an example of this. So, some people, whenever they get out of a relationship, automatically feel that they are entitled to a payback. So I've been in this relationship for this long, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, I've been with this person, or I've been in this relationship for this long, and I'm not leaving because I want this person to get right, or I want this person to do right by me, or I feel that I've suffered and endured enough that I should get something back. And so people stay in these relationships, whether they be relationships in romantic situations, where they stick to that relationship even though they already know, because they've had plenty of experience exemplifying that this is not going to change, or this person is who they are. And so the person sticks around because they feel they're owed. I remember a conversation I had with a client once where she asked me about a relationship, and she says, do you think this relationship is going to work out, or is this person going to get right? And I said, nope, I don't think they're going to get right. I don't think they're going to work out. I think that you're going to at some point have to realize that there's nothing that's going to change because they are who they're showing themselves to be. And they may not have the capacity to change or to be who you think they should be. They are who they are. They're not who you think they should be. And that is how it's always been. So I don't feel this relationship is going to get better. I don't think it's going to improve. I don't think that you're going to get this person to change or to be who you think they should be so that y'all can move forward with your life and be happy forever and ever. Amen. Not going to happen. So either accept this person as they are or move on. And I think she got upset and she got rowdy because she was like, no, like that's not right. That's not fair. And she was upset because in a way it's like, I'm the one that controls the situation because of what I'm saying. And she was like, no, like it's not right. That's not fair. They own me. Like I've been with them for so long. I put up through so much crap with them. And, like I deserve more from them. And I'm like, look, first of all, don't be upset with me because I don't control your situation or your relationship. I'm not forcing you to stay in that relationship. I'm not forcing this person to be the way that they are. It is what it is. I'm just telling you what I see, what I feel. This is what I feel. This is what I sense about the situation. So you can decide to accept things as they have been because they haven't changed. They're not different. I don't care what other psychics have told you. This is not your soulmate, and this is not the person that is going to be best suited to you. So you can keep sticking around in this relationship, or you can move on. But just because you feel entitled to a payback, just because you feel this person owes you, just because you feel you deserve a good relationship with this person, doesn't mean you're going to get it. So you can either accept reality or stick to what you think you're entitled to and continue to put yourself through suffering. But whatever suffering you experience from this moment of me telling you this, you brought it upon yourself and you own that. They don't own that because you've been warned. And so at that point, I don't think that they were happy to hear about that, but nonetheless, it was a reality of the situation. And it was just the same thing. Same thing kept happening over and over again. Nothing changed. So it's one of those things, that you either have to accept the reality of things, or you can buy into a belief and think that the belief is what should be happening, even though reality is giving you something different. So, let's see. Yeah, and part of that also, with the relationship bit, a part of that I think is complicated because people sometimes when they stop being in a relationship or when they step out of a relationship that they put so much of themselves into and they've been really pouring a lot of like their heart into, and they get brokenhearted or they get betrayed. And then they see that person go on and get into another relationship, and that relationship seems to do fine. It makes them feel like crap. And so these, sometimes in these situations, people will feel like absolute garbage because, oh my God, like they were able to do that with somebody else, but they weren't able to do that with me. First of all, you don't know what the hell is actually going on in that situation. So don't pretend to think that you know everything that's happened there. Secondly, that person is probably having to deal with baggage, this person's baggage, just like you were having to deal with it. It's just being presented to the world in a different way. Third, okay, good. The person was able to move on. It's going to make it easier for you to either accept the fact that they're not going to be with you or accept the fact that y'all aren't going to be together. So either way, use it to your advantage. Don't let it turn you into this bitter old fool who is going to be like latched onto that person for the rest of their lives. I mean, it just makes me crazy when I hear of people who have been stuck on people that they were in a relationship with for like 20, 30, 40 years. And I'm just like, move on. Like it didn't work. Not happening, stop reliving the what ifs, should have, could have. Like just let it go. Like it is what it is. Accept the fact of whatever. That doesn't dismiss the feelings or the connection, but it just isn't meant to be with this person, to move on. And for me, it's like when people are like, they won't move on with their lives. They won't allow themselves to be vulnerable. They won't let anybody else in because they are stuck in this idea that that person was the love of their life and they'll never have anything like that again. And I'm just like, no, stop that, drop it. Like If you close the door to potentialities, you are limiting your potentials, because you basically told the universe, this is only what I will accept. And the universe is like, okay, well, I guess you're going to miss that bus again. And so the universe is going to keep trying to help you and support you through your spiritual journey in this physical form. You have to like accept the ride. And if you refuse to accept the ride because it's not an Lexus, or it's not, in a BMW, or it's not in an Aston Martin, then at that point, that's on you, because you had an opportunity that could have carried you further and moved forward in your life, and you didn't. You chose to stay in that space, in that place, in that mental perspective that held you captive, that helped you to be a prisoner. And then you didn't release yourself. And then you want to put that on somebody else, or blame life, or blame God, or this or that. Get the fuck over it. Like, it's not about that. Like, it's about you making a conscious decision to choose the direction or the path of your life and of your future. It's a choice. You have to make this choice. You're not a victim. You're not someone where everything's happening to. You're a participant of this reality. You can choose to go with the flow, even if things happen that you don't agree with, but still moving forward, or you can fight the things you don't agree with and hold yourself captive to mindsets and experiences and suffering that does not serve you, and it's only going to get in the way of you gaining from your spiritual path, from your life's experiences, from the opportunities that may still be awaiting you. Alexis, I was supposed to go to Hawaii for vacation, but the testing for what is now becoming so difficult, and I don't know what to do, and if I need to cancel my trip, help. So, Alex, I was supposed to go to Hawaii as well. Our trip was booked, completely booked, for the end of September. We already had the place, we already had the tickets, and we were set. And today I made the decision to cancel the trip. And so I asked my family, because they were going too, and I was like, y'all can still go without me. Y'all don't have to go without me. I'll give my ticket to somebody, and somebody else can go in my place. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm fine. I'll take that. I already made, in my mind, I made peace with when I rescheduled this trip, because we were supposed to go last year and I had to cancel because of COVID. So this year I made peace that when I booked it, if something happens or COVID stirs up again and I can't go, then I lose out, and I lose my money, and I lose whatever I put into it. And so I was already making peace with that in my mind. Like, it is what it is, Well, today, after seeing some of the stuff and also hearing about Hawaii, and right now, I think they're like doubling the cases compared to their height of COVID. I was like, nope, there's no way. And then they're talking about a lockdown, and then they're talking about shortages there. There was an article that came out yesterday from someone who goes there often and said, I love Hawaii, but now is not the time to go, and this is why. And they talked about all the issues and the struggles with what's going on in Hawaii, and even people who, the tourism, it's insane. So I made the decision today not to go, and before I started working today, I canceled all of our plans, canceled everything, and the airline gave me money back. So I was like, oh, I gotta get my money back. And then I also lost no money. So I canceled my trip today. So if you can trust my instincts and just cancel your trip, which I would suggest, because I don't think it's going to be, the point is to go and to enjoy yourself, not to just go and just to go. And Hawaii is not Hawaii without the idea of paradise. So if you have paradise that's not being paradise, then there's no point in going. So I would just, if I were you, I'd just cancel. That's your choice, your decision, whatever, but I've already canceled mine today. And so we're just going to rebook for next year. So that, hopefully that answers your question, or that gives you the guidance that you needed, because I literally just did that this morning. Cassidy, leaving my first marriage after 13 years seemed impossible and terrifying. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I wish I had done it so much sooner. I understand it. Yeah, it depends on the relationship, because my last major relationship was not an easy one. It was a very challenging situation, and I allowed myself to fall into the mindset that I could never get anyone better, or that I was undeserving of love in a pure and in a pure way that wasn't going to come along with all of the pain and suffering that the relationship came with. So I was stuck in this mental state that I can't get better, I don't deserve better, no one's going to want me, or I don't deserve something more. And so I was stuck in that mindset, and that was a really hard egg to crack. there's only so much suffering you can go through before you just get pissed off and you're ready for change. And anger can be a very motivating emotion. You can think of anger in two ways. You can think of anger as just being enraged and upset and not being happy and just wanting to lash out and take it out on others. Or you can think of anger as like, I'm pissed because I allowed myself to fall into this perspective and this mindset. I'm pissed because I allowed myself to be treated this way. I'm pissed because I went along with what I knew better that I should have not gone along with. I'm pissed because I allowed myself to be diminished by just buying into the bullshit. And so when I left that relationship, I was pissed off. I mean, I was like, the anger was like, oh my God, I have a picture. It's an aura picture. You know those pictures currently in photography where you go and you take a picture and it's got your aura? I took several pictures over several years, and I talk about the different experiences that I was going through during those periods when I took that picture. And right after I left that relationship, I started to work on expelling that anger and releasing it, because I was so angry, and I'm not an angry person by nature, so I wasn't comfortable with that part of myself. And not only that, but I grew up in a very violent environment, and anger just wants to make you get physical, and so I wanted to just release myself. And so I had a practice every day that helped me to do that. But I ended up taking a picture at one of these psychic fairs of my aura, and at that time, what I would envision when I would do my meditation during my practice every day was I would envision the anger energy and that rage and that just toxic energy. I would envision it inside of me as like this like red cloud just there, just festering and festering. And I would envision it coming up and just coming outside of me. And so I would envision it that way, just this red cloud. And so during that period, I actually got a picture of my aura, and lo and behold, in that picture, there's a red cloud right next to me that we captured on that picture. I've got several, and I have to repost them because I haven't posted them in a while. But it was proof that what I was feeling and what I was personally experiencing was real and valid. And so I had to work through that anger. But I didn't just allow the anger to dissipate and go away. I was like, the anger was like, I was angry about all these things, but I was also like, oh yeah? Well, let me show you, motherfucker. Let me show you who I am and what I can do. Because I don't think you realized who I was, and I don't think you appreciated who I was. And you obviously are, you are obviously fucking your head for not ever seeing me for who I am and what I'm capable of. And so that's where I took my anger. And so instead of the anger of like, I want to hurt you back, it was more of like, let me show you by exemplifying everything that I was not in our relationship. And so I use that energy as fuel, and I use it as a nice, swift kick in the ass to push me in the direction of change. And right after that relationship ended, everything in my life changed. So let me help you understand how I was able to affect that. When I left that relationship, I left everything behind. I was sleeping on my mother's living room floor. All I had was just some bedding that I used as a bed because I had no bed, my laptop and some books. That was it. And then my job and my car. That's all I had. And so I walked away from that relationship with nothing, really, maybe a few boxes of crap that I had already packed, that I had already like boxed up from stuff that I cared about, but really wasn't as much of stuff. And so within a year, and my mother didn't have living room furniture at that time, so I was literally living on her living room floor. Within 1 year, I was promoted to store manager through Starbucks, so I got an opportunity to promote and go up and go to the next level of management. I also was able to, I bought a new vehicle or a new car that was way more in style with what I wanted. I got into a new relationship, I think within a few weeks of the relationship that I was in ending. And it's funny because I always tell, when my partner and I first met, he was like, so how was your last relationship? And I always made it sound like it was months before, when it was like 2 weeks before. I kind of like fibbed and lied about that, but it was only like 2 weeks prior to us meeting. But it worked out, right? So it doesn't matter. But I got into a relationship, and then I also, I bought my mother a living room furniture set so that no one would have to sleep on her floor again, and people could just sleep on her couch instead. And it had a pull-out, so it had a pull-out bed. So I bought her a living room furniture set so she wouldn't have to worry about that. And then on top of that, I bought a house. So I went from literally zero or nothing to all of this growth and all of this change and drastic shift in my life within 1 year of that, just by shifting the trajectory and using that anger to build with it instead of destroying with it. So that's what you can do with the human emotion, but you have to accept it and respect it for what it is or what it can be, which is a tool. Same thing with an ego. This is why I tell people the ego is not this like evil thing that you need to destroy within yourself. The ego is a tool. It's a hammer. You can either destroy with it or you can build with it, but use it as a tool. Don't dismiss its ability to transform and to create something in your life. And so that's why I use that as an example. It's funny because let's see. Seriously, your wisdom is just so. Oh, you're welcome, Alex. Yeah. Joanna Robbins is like, I think people should think I need something different instead of thinking they need something more. I 100% agree with that. So, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, when you're dealing with a situation, first of all, when you first meet people, wait 3 months because you can figure out who they really are or who they're going to be in the relationship at about that 3 month part, because the lovey-dovey and the honeymoon period tends to wear off around that 2 to 3 month period, and then the reality of life kicks in, and then people start to show who they are going to be in that relationship. And so for me, it was at that 3 month mark where my ex at the time, around that time is when they had an opportunity in a different city, and so they had to move to a different state. And I was like, I'm coming with you. Like, if you're going, I'm going, because I love you and I want to be with you. And so they had an opportunity to move and relocate. They did, and so I was like prepping everything. I was changing my life. I was telling family we're leaving. I was going to bring my mom with me too, because I was responsible for my mom at that time, and because she's schizophrenic. And so I was already going to change everything up in my life. And then during that period where I was making those changes and my ex was establishing themselves in another city, then of course they basically cheated on me. And so because of that, immediately I should have seen that as like, okay, this is who they are in their life right now. This is who they need to be. This is what they need to be going through. And so I should have taken that and been honest with myself about the relationship and how maybe we're not where we need to be in our lives. Maybe this person isn't ready for what I'm looking for, and maybe this is not what I need to be going through right now. Instead of accepting that reality and accepting what was, I chose to think of this person as the version of them that they presented to me in the beginning part of the relationship during the honeymoon period. And so I dismissed the grievances, I dismissed those red flags, and I chose to accept them as the version of them that I was choosing to accept, and not this other thing. And I said, we can work through this or whatever. And I stuck with it. And it was this like almost 5 year like back and forth, like just up and down scenario with this situation. And so had I just listened to my inner intuition, it would have changed the trajectory of everything. Now, granted, in hindsight today, I could say, God, I was so stupid. I should have just like totally seen that and said, screw this isn't going to work, or I'm not going to take the risk, and then just backed out of that whole thing and just gone on with my life. I could have done that, and today I can look back on that and give myself grief over it. But I'm honestly grateful for the experiences, because the reason why I'm able to be here telling you all of this, sharing what I learned, what I gained, what was received through that experience, is because I went through that. And so I use that experience now. It's one of the best teachers in my life, was that whole relationship, because it taught me so much about myself and who I am. And I see those patterns in other people now, and I identify them, and I understand what they're going through. I can empathize with someone when they've gone through an issue like that, or when I've gone through when they've been betrayed in that way and they're heartbroken. I get it. I understand now. But I needed to go through that experience because it serves me as a spiritual teacher right now, doing exactly what I'm doing for you. But if I weren't going to be a spiritual teacher, or if I wasn't going to be on a stage giving people advice or giving people counsel, then this would be, if I could be saying something different altogether, or have wanted something different to be happening with that. Venus is like, I went in April. It was no fun wearing a mask. Like, honestly, yeah, I don't mind wearing a mask. It's not a big deal for me. It is uncomfortable. But a condom is uncomfortable. Birth control can be uncomfortable. Having going and having a baby is extremely uncomfortable. But sometimes we have to be uncomfortable to achieve something that is worth it. And so it's just a necessity at this point. But at the same time, like I have this little thing with my mask. Because I have the luxury of not having to wear my mask as often. But during the summertime when it was hot, like what my mask has, I have this little like plastic cup and it goes inside of the mask. And so I have this like bubble, but my mask covers up the seals there and then seals here. And I make it tight. And so it's all within that. And so it feels much better because it feels like I have more flow. And that's worked for me. So that's worked for me. Mhm. So yeah, captivate. So 18 says, how can the people of Afghanistan now choose their path when they are kind of captivated? I think you mean they're kind of like they're stuck, right? Or they're stuck in that situation. So this comes down to there's two perspectives with this. First of all, my whole opinion about that whole thing is very specific because when I think there's so many different things that go along with that whole situation. First of all, if we started that shit, our government started that back in the day when when Russia was already, where it's USSR at that point, but they were already getting their hands in, digging in, and having influence and so forth. And so they were building a rapport with the Afghan government at that time. And we, being, the evil Russians or the evil USSR, we always had this like issue with Russia. And with the USSR, and so it was always communism, whatever. So the American, the U.S. was like, we're not going to allow Afghanistan to become another arm or branch of this larger entity of communism, and so we are going to destabilize their government. And so our government did some shady things, and they sponsored and supported they weaponized and they backed these rebel groups of people who were against the main government. It's almost like as if, let's say Australia decides they want to start sending weapons and start sending, military to train some of the homegrown terrorism that we have in our country, white supremacy, all of that stuff. If Australia says, hey, we're going to send weapons to these people, we're going to send the KKK weapons, we're going to send them our military to train them in combat, we're going to set up a network with them, that's what we did with Afghanistan. We basically sponsored a rebel organization and we backed them and we built them up. So we empowered them. And so because we empowered them, that created an entire mess in that whole scenario. And so this has been our mess from the get-go because we got our hands in there and we triggered a lot of things to kick off. Now, granted, when we went in there because of 9/11, which should have not gone in there, but when we went in there, of course, that was a whole nother set of circumstances that began to add more complex issues to the situation. And so we went in there and we took over and we occupied the territory, and it's almost like someone coming into your home and telling you how to run your house when it's your home. And so we went in there and we basically told them how to do everything and how they should be. and that they shouldn't do this, they should do that, but they should do this, they should do that. And so we went in there and we basically told them how to live their lives and how to run their home. And so because they were outnumbered and outgunned with the military going in there, it caused the society to change and transform. And so the society has gone through a huge shift in the last 20 years. And so Afghanistan, a few days ago, before all of this happened, was a very different place than what it was 20 years ago when all of this started off. And we're responsible for shifting all of that. Unfortunately, we as American citizens, I pay taxes. Every year I pay taxes. I pay my taxes. I don't know about y'all, but I pay my taxes. And I pay a lot of taxes. And I pay taxes, so I have every right to vocalize and to express my issues with what the government does. I don't care who's in power, who's running the show. I have the right to express what they're doing with my money because I'm paying for it. And so our money is going to rebuilding or to building up a country. And so think about it, all of that money, I mean, we're thinking about what, trillions of dollars? With that money, what could we have done with that money? We could have given people free healthcare. We could have given people college. We could have given people opportunities to be homeowners. We could have worked on the infrastructure. We could have upgraded and updated a lot of our own technology, a lot of our own systems. We could have switched over from fossil fuels to, renewable energies. We could have done so much incredible things with that. And instead we pumped it into reshaping this country in our own image because it gave us a branch to have power and control in the area and to create another ally. And so we were doing to them what Russia was trying, or what the USSR was trying to do back in the day. And so, of course, that's not sustainable. And especially right now, because whether they have shared this or not, the U.S. financially is in a crisis period because we have a lot of initiatives. We have a lot of things that the government is trying to do. We have a lot of things we need to do. We also have a lot of catastrophic things happening simultaneously. It's been a challenging situation for a very long time. And it's not going to get fixed anytime soon. And there's just no way to know when that was going to be done and over with. And so I don't agree with how things were handled with the pullout. I don't agree with how things were planned and coordinated. I really think that was the shittiest way of handling all of that. And so that's my view on all of that. And I think that with the people who helped the American government, with the people who helped us in what we were trying to do there, the people who were helping our troops to stay alive because they were acting as mediation, all of these people who were helping and assisting needed to be acknowledged and you can't ignore that. If I'm starving or I'm trying to fix something and my neighbor comes over and gives me the tool to fix it or gives me the food because we don't have it, for me to, all of a sudden we all in the neighborhood run out of food, but I can leave and escape where I can be okay, but and my neighbor's like, help, we need help too. To me, to turn my back on them is like really a shitty thing to do. So I wouldn't do that. So it's the same thing. We've basically turned our backs on people who helped us and were there for us, regardless of whether we citizens in the US realize it or not. So we do have a moral obligation. We have an ethical obligation to at least give appreciation with action. Not just say, thanks everybody, bye, we're out. You deal with the reality of what you're doing. No, we have an ethical obligation to acknowledge the help we received, to be grateful for it, to show that gratitude in action, regardless of whatever may come from that. And you have a lot of people here like, oh, I don't want Afghanistan's over here. I don't want people from over there. They're terrorists or whatever, which is the ignorant perspective on people who are not white and not, running around with the American flag in every second. That's the perspective. And so when you have people who are from different cultures and different countries who need support or need help, and they did some things for us, we have an obligation regardless of whether we're gonna have to take a hit or not. And then we already took the hit. We took the hit in trillions of dollars that went to something that we shouldn't have been doing. And so now this is the only way we can make it right at this point. But yeah, I get it. People are stuck, people are trapped in situations. But here's the thing, I, as a gay man and as a minority from the hood, was stuck and trapped in a life that was not easy. I was teased, I was attacked in instances, I was physically abused because of being gay. So I understand the threat. That level of threat with people who are LGBTQ plus in Afghanistan is to the next level. Women who are stuck having to deal with this backwards mindset for whatever reason are stuck in this situation. And I don't agree with us just turning our backs on people in that kind of scenario, But at the same time, it's not an ideal situation. But we live in a world that is not ideal, dealing with situations and circumstances that are not ideal. We can't even get people to get vaccinated. We can't get people to just agree to do the same things to see if what we all can do together can help us to stop something that is getting worse or that is not controlled. And it's not just here, because if we got every person in the U.S. to get a vaccine or to wear a mask or to socially distance or to take the right precautions, we still have to do it for the rest of the planet, because this is going to continue to mutate in other countries. This is going to continue to mutate in other places. It's going to mutate here. And so everybody has to be on board. And that's the thing. And this is something that my partner and I were talking about yesterday. At this point and at this juncture in human history, we will not survive or thrive if we don't come together and just do the same things and agree that it's necessary. And so at this point, we are being tested as a civilization by our own ability to survive, by our own ability to progress, by our own ability to adapt and evolve and advance. If you are on a house and it's flooded and someone comes by and they have a raft that doesn't look very stable, it doesn't look like it doesn't have a motor. All they have is they're paddling with water, but they're on it and you can get on it too. And there's a street that they're paddling to and they can get there. Don't tell the person that you don't want their help or that you're not gonna receive the assistance, because at that point, even if it's an imperfect solution to an exit from your condition, it's still a solution. So we as humans need to stop waiting around for perfect and ideal solutions, and we just need to use the solutions that we have at our disposal, even if they're imperfect, even if they come at a price. And this is coming at a price. So we have to make decisions that are imperfect because we are facing and dealing with situations and circumstances that are not ideal. I know people who have been I know people who are anti-vaxxers and were very vocal against me when I was pushing people to really take this seriously, to not to be okay, and I had people coming for me. This was just months ago, and I know of people who were coming for me and are now going through it, and have now realized in a very humble and sobering experience that they should have chosen the imperfect solution over the belief and delusion of a perfect exit, of a perfect way of dealing with this. So, and then you have people who, if you buy into conspiracies, people think, okay, this was a manufactured virus or this was a manufactured thing. Okay, why would you think your immune system could fight a manufactured or constructed virus? That doesn't make sense. So if this was constructed to cause what it's causing, and if you believe that, why would you think that your natural, unmanipulated immune system is going to be strong enough to fight something that has been constructed to destroy you? Like, why would you think that way if you believe in a conspiracy? So sometimes things are not matching up. People are not staying consistent with their ideas and their beliefs. I believe that this was totally like manufactured in the lab, but our immune systems can get through anything. No, our immune systems cannot get through anything because we have cancer that has ravaged our country, our world. We have viruses that are ravaging our world and have been for some time. People die of the flu, which is just another version of a type of virus. And so if our immune systems cannot even cope with that kind of a situation, why do you think your immune system is going to be able to fight something that supposedly is constructed in a laboratory? So and it's like, you got to think about these things. Like, that doesn't make any sense. This is an imperfect world. There are complicated issues here. Don't wait for a perfect solution. Just deal with it because this is the best way possible. And so, that's, That's the reality. This also goes along with people who have this like delusion that they're gonna end up with a perfect partner, a perfect husband, perfect spouse. You know, he was a little too short. I didn't like the mole in his face. He's a little bit heavier set. Oh, she doesn't have big enough breasts. Like, people have this delusion that they can just accepting a human as a spouse or as a significant other is settling. It's not settling. Settling is when you just accept someone that you really don't have feelings for and you don't really feel connection to, and you honestly do not feel anything with, and you don't even feel the sense of love with, or appreciation or friendship with, but you're just going to go with it because you think that's all you can get. That's settling. Connecting with people, feeling something, but they having issues like every human being does. They've got one bigger testicle than the other. It's an imperfect thing about them. Well, I can't deal with that because I gotta have someone who's 100% together and everything's gotta be right. And so, okay, well then you're allowed to remain alone for the rest of your life. And when you finally settle on someone that looks perfect, you're gonna have a rude awakening, which is what inevitably happens with people who get sidetracked and focus on imperfections. So it's like, okay, good luck with that. Good luck with you. And so it's something that people have to realize. Like, stop being so goddamn picky. You're a human being. At some point, your shit's gonna hang just like the rest of us. So you just need to look at what works, what you can do well with, what you can appreciate, and you can get an incredible experience from. And if they don't look a certain way or don't have this or don't have that, then it is what it is. But that's not settling. That's you honoring the opportunity, because there's an opportunity there for you to have experiences that you may not have if you are choosing to control the path, control the long-term experience you're going to have by trying to control all the variables that are going to be part of that, which includes a significant other. So stop with it. It's not worth it. All right, guys, I love you all. I'm done. I'm out of here. But yeah, so I love you all. I will be back on Friday for Study Group Time. But until then, y'all take care, okay? Bye, everybody.